Thank you for joining me today for the Myopia podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Dwight Akerman, and we're going to be talking about the business models of myopia management. As many of you know, Dr. Dwight Akerman serves as the chief medical editor for Review of Myopia Management, which is the world's most widely subscribed myopia journal. He's an internationally recognized senior healthcare leader with extensive experience in myopia management, peer education, communication, medical marketing, innovation, financial management, and merger and acquisition, business development, and licensing. Dr. Akerman was the vice president and global head of professional affairs and business development for Alcon before he retired in 2019 from that role. He's published widely and is a frequently invited peer educator on myopia management, cornea, contact lens, and business management topics. I'm excited to have Dr. Akerman as part of the Myopia podcast.
Optometric Insights Media proudly presents the Myopia podcast, where we give you the latest myopia research, clinical topics, and industry insights. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our awesome myopia content. And now to our host, a massive myopia manager himself, Dr. David Kading.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Myopia podcast. We're joined once again by the infamous Dr. Dwight Akerman, editor, head cheese at the Review of Myopia Management. How are you today, my man?
I'm doing very well, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited about this topic. This is one that everybody kind of wants to talk about. And, you know, some people may not know the incredible business sense that you have. You have your MBA and you've been operating major organizations far larger than my practice with your time with Novartis and Alcon and SIBA. So you have had some interesting conversations that have happened within Review of Myopia Management. And I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about the business models within myopia management. Walk us through a little bit about some of the different business models that you've heard of. I know what I've used and a couple of my colleagues, but you've got a pulse on a lot more. What are some of the ways that people are doing myopia management today and charging for it, so to speak, the business models?
Well, indeed, in Review of Myopia Management, we publish clinical articles, but we also publish a lot of practice management articles. And so this topic of implementation, we've written about this on a number of occasions, and we've featured a number of practices that have decided to take the plunge and to implement a myopia management subspecialty within their primary care practice. So let me provide some background. As I have polled clinicians, because Review of Myopia Management does polls from time to time, and just personal discussions with a lot of very successful practitioners around the United States, probably the biggest roadblock is, how do I incorporate myopia management into a busy primary care practice? You know, I talk to a lot of practitioners who are seeing 2 or 3 comprehensive exams per hour, plus, you know, emergencies, plus medical checks, and their day is busy. And so now, you know, when you talk about myopia management, they say, how in the world am I going to implement a myopia management strategy within my busy practice? And so I acknowledge that indeed, myopia management takes a little bit more time. So if you normally schedule 20 minutes for a comprehensive exam, 20 minute visit, right? You're going to do perhaps a comprehensive exam on a child, but you know, you're going to have to reappoint that child for a full discussion about myopia management and do additional testing that'll be required.
Right.
So first, the first step is, I think, is determine how involved do you want to be in myopia, right? Do you want to implement or not? Do you want to take the plunge and incorporate myopia management into your primary care practice? Now, there are some that have taken a concierge model. And I would say Treehouse Eyes has done that, with their some of their locations. They have a very high-end concierge model, which is very successful.
Sure.
But it's certainly not for everyone. It's certainly not for everyone. There's a lot of clinicians that say, I do want to practice myopia management, but, I have other specialties I also want to, such as dry eye or glaucoma, that I also want to emphasize. So, there's various levels of commitment to myopia management. I would say many practitioners I speak with are 50, 60-year-old practitioners. And I always laugh and point out to them that typically their patient base is about the same age as they are.
Yeah.
And that's true, isn't it? That's true.
Yes, it is.
So I say, look, if you really want to implement, you probably should hire a recent graduate.
Yeah.
That has an interest in pediatrics and perhaps even some pediatric training. Maybe they've done a residency in pediatrics. So I tell them that, if they really want to implement and they don't want to do it themselves, they should look to hire a recent graduate who has an interest in children and in myopia management. So that's point number one.
Yeah, and I'll just tag on to that. When you've got a busy schedule with tons and tons of patients, and the reason why you're having to go to 2 to 3 appointments an hour and 3 to 4 an hour is because your reimbursements are going down and you're having to see more patients to be able to make more money. You really have 2 ways of going about this. And if you're wanting to do something different, one is to hire an additional doctor to come in and bring something else to the office, be able to see some of those patients, freeing you up to be able to do those things. And that allows your practice to grow bigger with more patients. And then secondly, and there's a book called Small Giants. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's a book about companies that have purposely stayed small, but doing it very well. And that would maybe be one of those models where maybe you look at the insurance company that's reimbursing you the least, and then, graciously share with your patients that you're happy to give them, a private pay discount, and you cut that insurance, reducing the number of patients that you have in your office, allowing you to have time to bring in a subspecialty that then allows you to generate more revenue and help a larger patient base volume, of not number wise, but being able to extend the services that you have. Really, two different ways to go about that, right? And neither of them is wrong. Both of them are, certainly suitable and have been done successfully by all of our colleagues.
I would say that totally agree with you, Dave, but that makes a lot of practitioners nervous. That makes them very nervous to cut managed vision care plans and to reduce the number of patients they're seeing. They are very nervous about doing that. But you're right, some do and have been very successful at doing it. But again, going back to preparing the office to provide myopia management,
right?
There is not only scheduling questions. How do we schedule children who are myopia management candidates? After that initial comprehensive examination, what does the next visit look like, and how much time should be allotted? And then once the child begins an intervention, what's the follow-up schedule? During the first year and year 2 and beyond. So these scheduling questions have to be thought through and committed to prior to beginning myopia management. And then there's staff training. Right? Staff don't know anything about. They're like parents. They've never heard of myopia management, right? Most staff think myopia management is prescribing single vision glasses or single vision contact lenses, because that's what most practices traditionally deliver. So you've got to train your staff. You've got to role play with them. You've got to make sure that they're fully educated about the long-term eye health issues of myopia, why we have to avoid high myopia, and what the benefits are to the child of perhaps ending up as a 2 diopter or 3 diopter myope versus a 7 or 8 diopter myope. So training your staff is really critical so that they have the vision, to be your partner. Because in most practices, guess what? The patients spend more time with staff than they do with the optometrist.
Yeah.
And so they've got to be very well educated. So you have to make that commitment, that time commitment to educating your staff.
Yeah.
And third is the equipment. Right. If you're going to get involved in myopia management, I think most practices today have autorefractors, but you may also need a topographer if you're going to be fitting orthokeratology. If you don't have a topographer now, that is a potential expense. And then an optical biometer. As you and I have discussed in the past, Dave, myopia is an axial length disease.
It is.
And ultimately have to measure axial length because you've got to avoid an axial length of 26 millimeters or greater. All of the peer-reviewed publications point to that number, that if a child has an axial length greater than 26 millimeters, the chances are that they are going to have later in life a retinal detachment. They're going to have myopic macular degeneration. They're going to end up with posterior subcapsular cataracts, and they could end up with open angle glaucoma. So there's a lot of comorbidities associated with that higher axial length. And the only way you can measure that is with an optical biometer. Fortunately, all the major manufacturers are now coming out with modestly priced biometers that are much more affordable and oftentimes have software that can help you manage that child, keep records of their axial length and often plot that against graphs that have been generated in large studies. So they're becoming a lot more affordable versus the optical biometers that ophthalmologists oftentimes use for cataract surgery. Those oftentimes are $50,000 to $75,000. That's not what we're talking about here. Right. We're talking about optical biometers from all the major manufacturers that are much, much more affordable. So I believe that is the future, that optometry will be acquiring those instruments to help in the management of the child.
Yeah. And, I always like having that conversation with practitioners. If you are listening and you have an interest in having a conversation about, the equipment that you're needing as you're developing and building your practice, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, feel free to reach out to me, Dave at optometricinsights.com, and we can have some of those discussions about the technologies to incorporate. And as Dwight pointed out, there's going to be instruments coming along that are going to be a great addition to your practice because your autorefractor just died, and now it's time to get a new autorefractor. And I always say we don't need more boxes; we need more technology within each box. So correct. We should have topographers along with this and that and the other thing, and autorefractors along with this, that, and the other thing. Ultimately, the ideal box is capable of being produced today, which is an OCT, which has your autorefractory keratometer, your axial length measurement, all those things in one box. But I don't think that we're going to be able to get that one into our office anytime soon. So, Dwight, now how are we going to pay for this?
That's a great question. So there's two schools of thought there, Dave. As again, I have spoken to literally hundreds of practitioners around the United States about their philosophy. Essentially, there's two schools of thought. One is charge a global fee. So year one global fee covers all professional visits, comprehensive eye examination, myopia management examination, 4 or 5 follow-up visits during the year, any emergency visits during the year. All the professional fees are covered in that global fee. And their intervention is covered in that in that global fee, whether it's orthokeratology lenses or myopia control soft contact lenses or, topical low dose atropine. And the nuance there is that, of course, that at the moment, because there's nothing FDA approved, the nuance there is that oftentimes in this global fee, it's slightly less for those children who are on the topical low dose atropine because the parents are going to be buying that from the compounding pharmacy. But the contact lenses, Ortho-K or the soft lenses, would be distributed and provided by the eye care professional. So that's global fee for the first year. And if, again, one intervention isn't working and you need to switch to another intervention, all of that's covered in that global fee. Now, what about year 2 and 3 and 4? Because myopia management is a long-term proposition. If you're beginning to provide myopia management services to a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, chances are they're going to be monitored and treated for 8 or 10 years.
Right.
So in terms of this global fee structure, year 2 and beyond is generally about 2/3 of what the first year fee, global fee is. So that seems to be the number that I have ascertained from, again, literally speaking with hundreds of practitioners on this topic. And so why is it slightly less? Well, you've already conducted the comprehensive assessment, you created a treatment plan, and you're generally only seeing the child 2 times a year, moving forward.
And you've already entered them into all the equipment in the office, which generally takes most of the time, right?
Correct. Exactly. So there's a lot of time and a lot of explanation, a lot of discussion, a lot of education that's provided during that first year. So again, year 2 and beyond, it is a lower global fee. And again, it's a slightly lower fee for topical low-dose atropine because of the acquisition cost. In terms of parents always ask, well, is this covered by my managed vision care plan or major medical plan? And the answer is that sometimes the comprehensive examination is covered by their major medical plan, or their managed vision care plan. And so they could apply for reimbursement for the comprehensive examination. But the rest of the myopia management fee is not generally covered by managed vision care or major medical. However, some flexible spending accounts or health savings accounts do cover part of it. So oftentimes parents will submit their out-of-pocket expenses in myopia management to their health savings account or flexible spending account, and they oftentimes do get some reimbursement.
Yeah. So other ways besides this global is have you heard other people? Are they piecemealing it together?
They are.
Yeah.
So that's the other major camp is the a la carte. So a la carte. So they're going to charge for their comprehensive eye examination. They're going to charge a separate fee for their myopia management assessment and treatment, creating a treatment plan and educating the child and the parents. And then they're going to charge for their follow-up visits throughout the year. So there's kind of 3 professional fees involved. And then, of course, the material fee.
Right.
For the contact lenses, Ortho-K lenses, or the soft lenses.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of practitioners that prefer that method. I don't know why, because I believe that many parents feel like they're getting nickeled and dimed, and they're not getting, other than some of these fees are reimbursed through the HSA or FSA. They're paying out of pocket. So, I think it's important to educate parents that myopia management, like orthodontia, is going to be primarily out of pocket.
Right.
And,
You know,
that's,
and I
that's
think
exactly, that's
yeah,
exactly, Dave, how orthodontists charge.
sure. They bill those global fees. Yeah.
They
And I think
build
that's really a good way to go. That's my preferred method. That's how we've been doing it for
good.
15 years in my practice. And I'm going to make an argument for it here. So the way you generally come up with what this global fee is going to be for your office is you set a number randomly, and talk to a couple of your friends and see if there's some consensus in the area, and most everybody has a general idea. And if you're off a little low or you're off a little bit high and you can get patients to move forward, then do it. Take the first 5 patients that you have, find out the number of visits that you
Mm-hmm.
actually saw them over the
Mm-hmm.
course of a 3 or a 6 month period. You may see 1 or 2 patients after the 6 month period. We always do a 6 month check on our patients, but generally they don't come in again between the 6 month and the year visit unless there's a need, but that's only about 5% of the patients that actually come
Mm-hmm.
back. Take the number of visits that you saw on average for each one of those patients and then figure out what that dollar amount is per visit. And so what we generally would do is we would find out our revenue per encounter in our office. How
Mm-hmm.
many encounters do we normally see? Divide the revenue by, and then we come up with our chair cost, right? So now you've
Yes.
seen the patient 3, 4, 5 times. Take that times that dollar amount, because you're seeing this myopia management patient in place of something else. So that goes into the
Yes.
dollar amount. Find out your cost of goods, find out what your normal markup on your cost of goods is. And then there's a little bit of an added factor, because this is just a little bit more complicated. And that comes into a number, which is probably pretty close to what you came up with when you guessed. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where you set those numbers. And then in the years
Yes.
to come, you're generally going to see the patient 1 or 2 or 3 times less per year, depending on how
Right.
complicated the patient is. And you modify your fees from there. The beauty about doing the global fee is that when the patients need to come in, they come in, right? When you have a patient who is, on the a la carte, as you described, Dwight, is those patients hesitate to come in.
For
And they
sure.
may not be getting the myopia management effect that we really want them to have. And we're losing in that encounter. So really, I think the best care that we can provide is the one where we're doing things on averages, right? I may see
Yeah.
you 2 times, but I may have had to see somebody else 4 times. And on average, I bill everybody for 3 visits.
Which
So,
again is exactly how the orthodontists do it.
right.
They charge a global fee, and some are more complicated, some are less complicated. Some children they have to see more often, some children they see less often. But it's a global fee, and parents have learned to accept that. I mean,
Yeah.
most parents, accept that global fee from the orthodontist, and they just build it into their home budget. Well, similarly, hopefully, moving forward, as parents become more educated about myopia management, they'll
Mhm.
build this in to their home budget, because again, this is primarily going to be out of pocket, and which again is a great thing for optometry.
Yeah.
You and I have
Yeah.
talked about how optometry is being strangled by managed vision care plans. This is a great way to break the shackles and to introduce a subspecialty into your practice that is not going to be affected by managed vision care.
Yeah. And for some people, their budget, it's really difficult for them to come up with that large global fee all at once. So, right off the bat, if you don't already do this, you may be wanting to start planning for a subscription type of service. And we'll talk about
Exactly.
that more in some future podcasts. But, there are services that act kind of like a medical credit card, where there's zero
Yes.
interest for the patient. And you can get them signed up right off the bat. There's really not much skin in the game for you as far as what you're going to lose. And then there are also subscription services that you can provide, vision plans for your patients for eye exam plus glasses and plus contact lenses, and they pay the subscription over the course of the year. And doing that with your myopia management or your vision therapy clinic. And we'll have some of those discussions on in the future here as part of the Myopia podcast. Have you guys started talking about that at all with review? And do you have any articles
We have
already on that?
We have talked about
Yeah.
some of these subscription services that do help families that just can't write the check for for a fairly large amount of money, and so these subscription services really help them say yes. It really helps mom say yes.
Yeah.
Because she may have 3 or 4 children, all of them are myopic, right? And she's thinking now, how in the world am I going to pay for several of my children to be treated for progressive myopia?
Right.
So I'm a big fan of these subscription services.
Yeah. So I want to bring up one other aspect, because we're kind of talking about things that are expensive, and quite frankly, there are some myopic families that they can't afford any of this stuff. And want to bring up something that we're doing in our office and get your take on it, Dwight. If you've heard something similar, is we've over the years developed quite a few patients who have had myopia management. And, you can go to those patients and those families and just say, hey, we're setting up a scholarship fund for other families. We'd love to see if you would be interested in contributing something to that. We also contribute a portion of our profits in our practice for patients who, aren't able to pay. There's some insurances that we do not take that would be really low reimbursement. So rather than taking those insurance companies, we set aside some of the money that we have. And then there's a group of patients, when they can't afford it, they apply for a scholarship. And, the scholarship committee, made up of a couple of people, is able to look at it and, try to help those patients.
That's
we usually
wonderful.
don't give it away for free. They do have to pay a portion of it so that they find the value. But those are really nice things to be able to do when you do offer a high value, high cost program in your office. Is find a way to give back for those patients who are not legitimately able to afford it.
I think it's
the profits that you have.
That's a great idea, Dave. Congratulations for implementing that program. I was not aware that you've done that, and it's a great way to help some families that just can't afford it.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, oftentimes there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 children, and all of them are myopic, and so the parent is saying, what am I going to possibly do here? How am I going to choose one child over another child?
Right.
So that's a great way to help some of these families.
Yeah, I'll admit to you, we were doing it in our vision therapy practice for years, and I don't know why I was so dense to not move it over into our myopia management world, but it is certainly something worth considering. And if anybody has any questions about a program like that, feel free to reach out and let me know. Any closing words here on business models and charging patients for what we're doing here, Dwight?
Well, I think my closing comment, Dave, would be that it's important to think through these financial aspects prior to implementation.
It is.
If you just jump in and you're unprepared, your office is unprepared, your staff is unprepared, chances are you're going to lose money. You're not going to make the revenue that you were making with your busy primary care practice that was humming along, seeing 3 or 4 patients an hour. So it's important to really think all these aspects through that we've talked about here over the last few minutes, and to set a fee schedule that makes sense for you, that your staff can explain, because the staff are the people that are ultimately going to explain the fee schedule to the parents. But now's the time to get involved. We're right at the beginning stages of a whirlwind of activity in myopia management. As you and I have talked about, Dave, right now there's only a few products that are FDA approved for myopia management or myopia control. But there are literally, 5 or 10 products that are on the horizon to be FDA approved here within the next few years. And with all of the good work that GMAC and other organizations are doing to educate consumers and other stakeholders about myopia management, parents are going to start coming in and asking about myopia management. This business of having moms say, I've never heard of myopia management. What are you talking about? I think you're going to see a lot less of that moving forward. So now's the time to get prepared and get proactive.
Absolutely. Well, Dwight, it's always a pleasure to get to chat with you, whether on the Myopia podcast or getting to talk to you about review of myopia management or, at one of these breakout sessions that we have. It's been always great to hear your insight and your perspective. Thank you for what you're doing to support us that are in the clinic, helping our patients. We sure appreciate all your perspectives and all of your work to help move our industry along. Thank you, the listener, for joining us for this episode. We're so grateful that you've come along for the ride with us. Look forward to future episodes. Make sure to like and subscribe. Leave comments if you have anything that you think we need to be talking about the Myopia podcast. And make sure to leave a 5-star review so other people know what you think of our program. Have a great one and join us next time for the Myopia podcast.
This podcast was brought to you by Optometric Insights Media. If you enjoy our content, please leave a 5-star review. And don't forget to subscribe for more great episodes.